All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today we're going to be talking about another Bad Batch 2-pack of episode drop this week. We had episode 10, Identity Crisis, and episode 11, Point of No Return. This was the second time this season that I was totally surprised that we were getting 2 episodes in 1 week, but it seems like they're very much trying to wrap this show up before May 4th. We just had the Tales of the Empire trailer drop just the other day, and that will be released on May 4th, so it looks like animation is just going to dominate from now until the end of May 4th, which is really exciting for me because Star Wars animation has been the most consistent form of storytelling that we have gotten in the visual medium for Star Wars under Disney. But getting back to the episodes, I absolutely loved episode 10, Identity Crisis, centering around Emri and her new role as head scientist, and realizing that with that role comes the responsibility of overseeing the testing and experimenting on Force-sensitive children that are essentially prisoners inside this facility, and her grappling with the ethics of what's going on in the facility that she didn't know prior. When Bad Batch sets its mind on telling grim, atmospheric stories, it really is some of the best animated storytelling we have from Star Wars. I love how the Kiner brothers have brought their absolute A-game to Season 3 of The Bad Batch. I love the distant synths, the almost lullaby-type chords that they play throughout these Mount Tantus episodes. The heavy bass at all times, it is just so engrossing, and it fits this show so well. I've said it before, but I really do think from a atmospheric standpoint, this is the Kiner Brothers' best Star Wars animated score. And this season, I felt like they've really delved into more melodic themes and motifs. And the music mixed with the storytelling at the end of this episode made me emotional. Unfortunately, what this episode proves once again is that the Bad Batch TV show is at its best when it is not focusing on the Bad Batch. When it's focusing just on Crosshair outside of the Bad Batch, focusing on Emri, focusing on Commander Cody, Senator Chuchi, Omega, anytime they're not focusing on the batch itself, this show hits its stride. Which again is a great compliment that they can tell side character stories this well, but also is a detriment to the main point of the show. So getting into the actual story of the episode, Emri has been such a great character this season. They teased her at the end of Season 2 with Omega meeting her, and she's really blossomed into this really complex character, even though she's always monotone. I love how she kind of changes throughout this episode. When you see her face when she realizes that they are basically imprisoning children and experimenting on them daily, it really hits you because it is bringing down her entire worldview. She knew they were doing shady stuff, but I mean, this is a whole new level. I think this commitment to dystopian type storytellings that they've shown in the Age of the Empire or the pre-Age of the Empire in Disney Star Wars is some of the strongest storytelling that Disney Star Wars has introduced between Andor and Bad Batch. These episodes where you feel the weight and oppression of the Empire's rule. This facility, there's such a desaturation of colors and character. I don't think that it's a coincidence that all 3 of the children that are being held in this whitewashed facility are very colorful. They're blue, green, and red. And seeing confusion, depression, and just the longing to go home from these kids it's so hard to not feel emotional watching these types of stories. And every time the kid asked Emri, can we go home, or he wants to go home, it just tugs at your heartstrings. And of course, since we see these kids in this situation, we know that the baby that has been captured by Cad Bane at the beginning of this episode is going to suffer the similar fate. And since it's a baby, it's even worse because it's going to grow up in this world and not really remember what it was like before he was in, or she was in, Mount Tantus. I mean, Cad Bane shoots his mom, stuns her, which, maybe Cad Bane's growing up a bit. Maybe he's gone soft. Loved seeing him in this episode. And he brings her to the facility, and I love that Cad Bane calls out Emri, where all these other Imperial scientists, Hemlock and all of them keep kind of trusting her and giving her power. And she's asking all these questions to Cad Bane, and he immediately spots that she's going through a change because he has that street knowledge and he knows how to read people. He isn't a lab scientist and doesn't pick up on social cues. My favorite line in the episode is when he's like, asking questions like that, you give more away than you think, when Emri starts saying, oh, where did this kid come from? It was such a great line, and they did Cad Bane justice once again. He's one of the best characters that they introduced ever. I know I'm jumping around a bit in this episode, but when Hemlock said, these are just scientific assets, nothing more, talking about children, it really just takes the wind out of you. And Emri's like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And Scorch, my boy from Republic Commando, the main Republic Commando that we see in this episode, he shoots the kid with a stun, which we know could potentially kill the kid. It is so brutal that Scorch was in the Republic Commando video game and was such a likable character, and now he's just the biggest dick in this facility. Some final points and thoughts on this episode as a whole. We see that Omega's blood is more of a binder for Force-sensitive cloning and is less about her having a high M count. So that's really interesting going forward. I think that's something that I mentioned when we first started talking about Omega and why she's so special. She is the original DNA of Jango Fett that they used for the cloning process. So her and Boba Fett both have the most pure DNA outside of Jango Fett. And we know towards the end of Clone Wars that DNA starts to get stretched thin because they use it to clone so many clones during the Clone Wars. Just said clone way too many times. So we know that Omega's blood has that ability to be used in this way. The other thing I liked about Emri's story here is that when she goes to talk to Nala Se has such a ghostly voice. It's almost like she's the ghost that's haunting Emri, like, you have the power, you can change things. It's like this haunting presence that's always over her shoulder, and I just thought that was a cool little detail. And the final thing I want to discuss about this episode is the Tarkin and Hemlock interaction. It gives us a peek into that military-industrial complex and the geopolitics between leaders in the Imperial military. We know they're all kind of fighting for resources to get projects done that they believe in. We know from the Thrawn books that Thrawn and Krennic disagreed on the efficacy of using all the funds to go to the Death Star. Thrawn was like, building one station makes it vulnerable because it's just one source of power. What we should invest in is these Imperial fighters that have shields on each of them. It would make them stronger. And Krennic disagreed, and Tarkin agreed more with Krennic's plan. He ends up overseeing the Death Star because he believes in a show of force. So we know we've seen this type of politics before in the books, but it's cool to see it here with Hemlock being like, oh no, we have to invest this money here. And Tarkin's probably overseeing the Death Star right now. Is like, no, the money you're taking away from the Death Star is not being well spent. Small little conversation, but I think it says a lot about the interfighting between Imperials. But yeah, overall, I loved episode 10. It's one of my favorite episodes of The Bad Batch. I always appreciate when Star Wars animation has a cold closing where they don't use the fanfare when it says created by Dave Filoni in the blue. They use the atmospheric haunting score from the episode to kind of play out the episode. I know at the end of Clone Wars, you'd have this really depressing episode and then it'd be like, dun, 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 and it's like, I don't want that. I want something more emotional. And they did that here. So loved that. Jumping into episode 11, Point of No Return, we go back to Pabu and we see the Bad Batch crew are cleaning up their stuff. They're packing. They're ready to leave. And there's this ominous feeling that something bad is going to happen and the Empire does eventually show up. Overall, I liked this episode. I think it's weaker than episode 10. It's just like a solid, fine episode. I think I wished that there was a bit more violence inflicted by the Empire when they showed up on Pabu. We don't see them really kill any of the civilians here. They blow up, the fishing skiffs, which kind of limits their ability to survive after they leave. But I don't know. I just felt like they kind of pulled a punch here. Like it would almost be more impactful if they kind of rounded up the citizens, brought them to the city center and said, Omega, if you don't come out, we're going to start executing civilians. I know that at this point, the Empire still has to portray itself as a fair and just ruling body, but at the same time, we know that they've committed atrocities on these small worlds. So I feel like seeing that here, especially on a planet that we've grown to appreciate with Pabu and it's seen as a sanctuary, and seeing it go so downhill with the Empire showing up, I think that would have been more impactful. But we don't see that. Again, that's a choice by the creators. Didn't work for me, but maybe worked for everyone else, how they did it in the show. I thought the action here was pretty cool. Like when Hunter jumps on the Republic gunship and he's like flailing and the pilot's trying to shake him off, but the main assassin clone's just like, screw this, and just shoots the pilot right from the ground. I was like, damn, that was sick. That was cold as hell. And makes me not pull back on my prediction of who the assassin clone is, because again, I know the theories are still flying. They think it's Tech. I personally think it's Commander Cody. But because he hit this shot and he's been using a sniper, there is a small part of me that believes that this assassin clone might be a clone of Crosshair. That's more of my out there prediction. I still think Commander Cody is the right answer. And we do hear some hints into his voice here because it kind of cracks between that scary voice that they give him and then we hear some of the clone voice kind of break through. So I do still think it probably is Cody, but because he hit this shot and we know that there have been experiments run on Crosshair on Mount Tantus, he shakes his hand a lot. There's a part of me that thinks maybe they did some experiments on his arm and how he was able to grip the rifle and be so accurate as a sniper. And it makes me think that not like Space Jam where they take the ball and they take Michael Jordan's powers and give it to another clone, but there is some merit there that they did experiments on his hand and tried to recreate him as the perfect sharpshot. And they made this assassin clone in his image. So that would be kind of cool if he takes off his helmet and it's Crosshair as a clone. I don't think it is, but this sniper shot just made me think of that theory. What else happened in this episode? Oh, the Marauder got destroyed. You know, the main ship that has been the home base for the Bad Batch was destroyed. Again, I never felt that connected to the ship. So in the moment, I was like, oh, they destroyed the ship. But I was like, oh, wait, that kind of is a big reveal. But it doesn't have the same weight as like the Razor Crest being destroyed in Mandalorian Season 2, which I still hate that ship was destroyed. I loved that ship, but it's gone now. Because of the explosion, Wrecker was injured. I actually thought they might kill him. I was like, wow, wait, they might go for it, because at this point in the story, I feel like it's really Crosshair and Hunter that are driving the story with Omega, and Wrecker is there just for comedic relief. So if they really wanted to have an emotional second half of the final season, why not start with a bang and kill Wrecker? I thought they might go down that route, but he's just unconscious, so he's fine. I'm sure he will not die. And yeah, Omega gives herself up at the end. I thought it was a great moment when she tells Crosshair, like, remember the mission. Like, this is all for the cause of stopping the Empire and saving people. So I'm going to give myself up here. And we know that Crosshair fails to track her. He's supposed to shoot the ship as it's leaving and they could track Omega, but he misses. It was kind of awkward how they did it with him running and then he tripped on something and the tracker fell short. But regardless, Omega is now gone again, captured and going to Mount Tantus, and the Bad Batch will have to work together to find her, whether that's just Crosshair and Hunter now, whether Rex now becomes more involved to find Tantus, who knows, but it looks like that's where the story's going. I don't have really any other main thoughts about this episode. It was pretty cut and dry. Again, I wish there was maybe some more violence inflicted on the people of Pabu. Maybe that's just me and my crazy brain that wants more violence in this show because it would drive home the tone of what this time period is. But I think it did its job here. I guess the next, what do we have, 5 more episodes left, are really going to focus on the Bad Batch working with Captain Rex to pinpoint the Mount Tantus location. Maybe Emri gets a signal out to get them to come there. Maybe Rex and Echo have been able to find a route to get there. Whatever it is, we have 5 more episodes. I believe the finale is like 3 episodes. I think it is. So we might only have like 2 more weeks of just single episodes, and then we're at the finale already, which is crazy to say. I will say I did enjoy that we kind of got back on track with this episode. I thought that Asajj Ventress episode just felt wrong. I don't know. I didn't like that. It kind of retconned the Dark Disciple book. I didn't really like that they tried to do this master-apprentice relationship with Omega. But I'm getting a little too deep. If you want to go back and listen to my thoughts on that episode is available. I go pretty hard on it, so it's kind of an enjoyable rant episode to listen to. But that's really all I have for these 2 episodes. I really liked the first one. The second one was just like good. It was just fine. Appreciate it. Cool moments. Maybe some more theory crafting. But yeah, I want to hear what you guys think. You can follow me at @star_wars_mark of balance on Instagram. Definitely want to talk some Star Wars, some Bad Batch with you guys. Definitely reach out. If you're listening to this on whatever streaming platform you're listening to this on, leave me a review. Really appreciate it. That helps a lot. If you have anyone that you know really likes Star Wars, let them know about the podcast. Have them come down, listen to whatever I'm talking about. I talk about Star Wars animation. I talk about books. I talk about movies. I talk about video games. Anything that's Star Wars, I'm likely talking about it. So I'm sure I have something for everyone. And yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.